Along Kenya's northern coast sits Lamu Old Town, shaped from coral stone, mangrove timber, and centuries of coastal life. It's the oldest surviving Swahili settlement in East Africa. And what's unusual is that it never stopped being lived in. If you were standing here, you wouldn't notice grand monuments first. The architecture is quiet, but deliberate. Homes turn inward toward shaded courtyards. Narrow streets hold on to cool ocean air. Verandas open daily life to the street, softening the line between public and private space. One of the details people tend to linger on is the carved wooden doors. Each one reflects generations of craftsmanship and the long trade routes that once connected this coast to Arabia, Persia, and beyond. Lamu Old Town sits on a small island off the East African coast, roughly 350 kilometers north of Mombasa. For more than 7 centuries, people have continued to live in the 16-hectare settlement of closely packed houses, mosques, and narrow streets. It's the oldest and best preserved Swahili town in the region. Not a reconstructed heritage site, and not an abandoned settlement, but a real place that has remained continuously active and inhabited. While many Swahili coastal towns were eventually left behind, Lamu persisted, carrying forward not just its buildings, but its social life, customs, and everyday routines. Much of the town's original building fabric is still in use today, creating a living connection between present-day life and a medieval past. For centuries, Lamu was one of East Africa's most important trading ports. Maritime routes connected it to inland networks and to the wider Indian Ocean, making the town a point of exchange rather than an endpoint. This role gave Lamu influence far beyond its shores, shaping religious life, cultural practice, and technical knowledge across the region. The town reflects a long history of interaction between Bantu communities, Arab and Persian traders, Indian merchants, and later European powers. These encounters shaped the rise and decline of East African seaports and defined a crucial economic and cultural era in the region's history. Nowhere is that history more clearly expressed than in Lamu itself, in its architecture, its town planning, and the way the built environment supports everyday life. From the 19th century onward, Lamu became an important center of Islamic learning and Swahili culture, drawing scholars, teachers, and students from across East and Central Africa. That legacy remains visible today in events like the annual Maulidi and other cultural festivals, which are not modern revivals, but living traditions rooted in this intellectual and spiritual role. Lamu continues to serve as a significant center for education in Islamic and Swahili thought, maintaining a cultural influence that extends far beyond the island itself. Streets, stone, and the shape of the town. Lamu Old Town is defined by its narrow, winding streets and its stone buildings, many of them marked by large, curved wooden doors that immediately catch the eye. These forms reflect a long fusion of Swahili, Arabic, Persian, Indian, and European influences, shaped over centuries into something distinctively local. Seen from the sea, the effect is especially striking. Buildings along the waterfront present a unified facade, with arcades and open verandas facing the ocean. From a distance, the town reads as a single architectural gesture, calm, ordered, and closely tied to the coastline. Inside the houses. Behind these stone walls, the interiors tell a quieter story. Homes are often richly decorated through careful detail. Painted ceilings add color and pattern overhead. Walls are shaped with large niches, known as madaka, and smaller recesses called zidaka, designed for both practical use and visual balance. Scattered among these features are pieces of Chinese porcelain embedded into walls as markers of trade, status, and connection to the wider Indian Ocean world. These details remind us that Lamu's houses were not isolated structures, but part of a global exchange network that reached far beyond East Africa. The buildings themselves remain remarkably well preserved. Their construction reflects the evolution of Swahili building technology, relying on coral stone, lime mortar, and mangrove poles, materials drawn directly from the surrounding environment, and refined through generations of knowledge. These materials are not historical references. They are still used in everyday construction and repair, making Lamu's architecture authentic through continuity rather than preservation. A city shaped by culture and kinship. The layout of Lamu is just as important as its buildings. Its narrow, labyrinth-like streets trace their origins to Arab traditions of land division and urban planning. But the town is not organized only by streets. It is organized by people. Lamu is divided into smaller wards or mitaa, each made up of clusters of houses where closely related families live near one another. This spatial arrangement reinforces social bonds, turning architecture into a framework for community life. Homes open onto porches known as daka, while town squares and seaside barazas provide spaces for conversation, learning, and communal life. These spaces are not decorative, but functional parts of the town's social fabric, shaping how people meet, teach, and pass on knowledge. The people of Lamu have preserved social traditions that reinforce a strong sense of belonging and shared identity. The town's layout embodies this way of life, maintaining Lamu's role as a center for Islamic learning and Swahili cultural education. A fragile balance. Lamu's historic buildings and narrow urban spaces are sensitive by nature. Modern developmental pressures and inadequate infrastructure risk overwhelming structures that were never designed for heavy loads, large-scale construction, or even rapid expansion. The town's survival depends not only on its buildings, but on its relationship with the surrounding landscape. Lamu is closely tied to the sea, the sand dunes, and the mangrove forests that shelter its port. The dunes of Shella are essential, not only to the town's visual identity as an island settlement, but to its fresh water supply. Unregulated development and encroachment threaten this delicate balance. The town's distinctive character depends on maintaining the fine-grained urban fabric that gives Lamu its identity. Preserving authenticity here means protecting not just individual buildings, but the relationships between spaces, material, and daily life that hold the town together. Protecting a living town. Lamu Old Town is legally protected under Kenyan heritage and planning laws, with conservation measures in place to safeguard both the town itself and its surrounding landscape. Since the 1980s, a dedicated conservation office is operated in the town, working alongside local authorities to guide preservation efforts and advise on development. A long-standing conservation plan balances the needs of residents with the protection of the town's architectural and cultural fabric. Most buildings remain in use, and the town is considered to be in a generally stable state of conservation. Despite these protections, Lamu faces growing challenges. Informal settlements, illegal development on the sand dunes, and pressure from large infrastructure projects, including port expansion and cruise ship facilities, threaten the fragile balance between town, sea, and landscape. Current management efforts focus on addressing these risks through coordinated planning, environmental protection, and long-term conservation strategies designed to keep Lamu both alive and intact. Lamu Old Town endures not because it has been perfectly preserved, but because it has been continuously alive. Its streets, buildings, and social spaces carry the weight of centuries, not as relics, but as habits, repeated, adapted, and shared across generations. What survives here is not just architecture, but a way of living shaped by the sea, by trade, by faith, and by community. To understand Lamu is to recognize that heritage is not something inherited once and stored away, but something renewed each day through use, care, and attention. If you're interested in more places like this, like the video and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.